The one word I can use to describe Black Panther Wakanda Forever is triumphant. It is a triumphant movie. It is a triumphant experience at the cinema. And it's just a triumph for Ryan Coogler and company in the way that they blended a real life tragedy in the death of Chadwick Boseman into the plot of this film. And so, if you haven't been following along, Chadwick Boseman passed away just as this film was about to be done with the script phase and they were finishing up and getting ready to go into pre-production, and he died. And so they had to make changes to that plan, and the changes to that plan are this movie now. And Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I'm not here to debate whether or not they should have recast T'Challa or whatever, but this is a spoiler-free review, so anything that involves that, besides what you see in the trailers and besides the preliminary knowledge, you won't get anything else from here other than just a spoiler-free review of the film. So let's get into it. It is an excellent, excellent, excellent tribute across the board to Chadwick Boseman and the character of T'Challa. Everything in the film sort of revolves around that exercise of, you know, going through grief and going through the stages of grief and how different people deal with it. And so you have a lot of the more ancillary characters from Black Panther come back in this film, and they have a wider focus and a wider scope to who they are and who they are as characters. You get a lot more from characters like M'Baku, Okoye, Shuri, and Ramonda, Nakia, and you get new characters like Namor and Riri Williams, who are just absolutely highlights of the film. But it's not just all grief and doom. There's a lot of good action here. There's a lot of good set pieces. The film does end up running a little bit long. It's about 2 hours and 40 minutes, so it is sort of on that Avengers Endgame level of length. But there's not much you could cut from this, and it doesn't really feel like a 2 hour and 40 minute movie. It goes by in a pretty brisk pace, and there isn't really any places where you could think that, oh, well, I need to go to the bathroom or something like that. No, you're engaged the entire time with Black Panther Wakanda Forever. The performances in the film are absolutely excellent. A lot of people are talking about Angela Bassett's performance. She is a tour de force, a powerhouse in this film. She is amazing. She's furious. She's fiery, but she's also so soft and tender when she needs to be. And she's just the emotional sort of crux of this film. Letitia Wright as Shuri goes from the happy-go-lucky sort of kid genius in Black Panther 1 to the leader of Wakanda basically here in this film, and she has to deal with her brother's death and how she deals with that, and on top of a war with the Atlanteans. And speaking of the Atlanteans, Namor is the highlight of this film. Tenoch Huerta as Namor is the ultimate performance in this film. He is absolutely fantastic and terrifying and furious, and just, he makes you feel for him as a character, and it's really, 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 really just like a nice performance from him, because you get this feeling where you're like, oh man, he's not the true villain. He's not a mustache twirling villain here. He's got layers to him and edges, and it's just a very well-written part in a very well-written movie by Ryan Coogler and Joe Robert Cole. You get Dominique Thorne as Riri Williams here, who's the future Ironheart, and she's going to show up in that series, but she is great here. And like Chadwick Boseman in Captain America Civil War, you just left leaving, I want to see more from this character. I want to see more from this performance because she's that good. She brings a lot of levity and sort of comedic effect to the film that does get a very deep down into that grief and that sadness, but it gets pulled out every once in a while by her character particularly. As for the cons in the film, like a lot of Marvel movies these days, the CG is spotty. So you've got these beautiful landscapes of Wakanda and Atlantis that look absolutely stunning, absolutely fantastic. But then when it gets down into the action, you get a little bit, some of the spottier sections of CG. It just does a little bit enough to take you out of the experience and out of the theater and say, oh, wow, I'm sitting in a theater instead of watching this huge battle going on in front of me. The third act does suffer a little bit. The first two acts are great, and they tell this like wonderful, grand, overarching story. And then the third act sort of devolves into this like action fest where it's just people fighting in different sections. It's like a lot of other superhero movies, but those don't really take away from the film very much. And then finally with the cons, the MCU stuff that they put in, like the bureaucratic sort of sword, shield kind of stuff that gets put into the film, feels like it's tacked on. It feels like it doesn't really need to be there. It feels like it's setting up for something in the future, but like everything in the MCU, it does set up for something in the future. But this movie as a whole is a pretty self-contained story that does have overarching stuff in the future. Namor is a huge character, obviously, for the MCU, Ironheart, stuff like that. But as a story by itself, it's pretty self-contained. So in conclusion, Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a triumph. It is wonderful. It is easily among the best films that Marvel has ever made. It's one of the best of Phase 4. It might not be my favorite of Phase 4. It might not be as entertaining to me as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness or Thor Love and Thunder. But as a movie, as a cinematic sort of critique, it is the best movie. It is the best looking movie. It just has some of the best performances. It might not just, for me, be as entertaining as those other films were, but it's a great cap off to Phase 4 for Marvel. And Black Panther Wakanda Forever is absolutely fantastic. It is a weighty plot, but it never ends up feeling cheap. It never feels cheap with the way that it uses T'Challa or Chadwick Boseman's death. If you can watch interviews with the cast, you can see exactly why they didn't go the route of recasting him. And also, they just have that down the line. It's comic books. It's Marvel. They can do whatever they want. They can bring people back. They can recast people down the line. But for this point in time, you really needed, I think this was the movie that they needed to make, and this was the movie that we all need to see, because Black Panther Wakanda Forever is a triumph. It's fantastic. Go see it. It releases in theaters on November 11th, so go check it out in theaters, and if you don't want to go see it in theaters, wait until it comes on Disney Plus or whatever, because as a Marvel fan, and if you love Marvel movies, you need to see this movie, because it is a cathartic experience that goes through grief, that builds characters up and brings us new characters that are absolutely stunning, and of course Namor is terrifying and badass as ever. So make sure to go check out Black Panther Wakanda Forever in theaters, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and do all that YouTube stuff, because it really helps me out. It really helps me know what you guys want to see on the channel. And we're heading into November, we're heading into holiday season, so we're going to be having gift guides and all that stuff, so make sure to check that out when it comes out on the channel. And thank you for watching, and go see Black Panther Wakanda Forever in theaters on November 11th.